That sort of like feeling and vibe that connects the songs together for me is a vibe of horror. And not horror like telling a horror story or like a horror movie, but it feels horrific. So that's sort of like, it's not just aggressive, it is aggressive, but there's also this sort of like, you know, I don't want to get too into like H.P. Lovecraft stuff, but this sort of like unearthly, ominous, terrible horror thing, that kind of like looms over it. I think that's one thing I try to do to kind of bring the songs together.
Nuclear Tune's Terror Labyrinthian is a 2024 single from their full-length album of the same name. The song describes one's feelings as they navigate a complex world full of sorrow and hopelessness. Such was the case with Frederick Douglass. His affliction as a person born into slavery would not be lost on him, even as a young boy. Born into Torment is a track detailing one's search for meaning and truth regarding their place in the world, only to leave them numb and disillusioned in the end once they realize how dire their circumstances are. This has plagued Douglas since he learned to read. His unique plight of maddening awareness has driven him to contemplate death and suicide. The song Ashen Lamb is a critique of religious and spiritual hypocrisy. Chapter 10 of the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass chronicles Douglass's experience on Mr. Covey's farm. He hid his brutality behind a veil of religious piety. Douglass suffered greatly by Covey's hand, which rendered him a shell of his former self. In the song Fatal Visions, the protagonist has reached an enlightened and empowered state, brought on by a revelation/idea that sparked within them. In Douglas's case, it was a physical battle. Despite all that he endured, he fought his enslaver, Mr. Covey, and won his freedom. These days, my head, to my chin, The explicit message of standing up for the oppressed in the face of injustice is brought to the forefront in the song Vile Humanity. The more Douglas learned about slavery, the more his hatred grew for the enslavers, and the more his empathy grew for the victimized. His determination inspired the likes of Dr. Joy DeGroy to contribute to the fight for African American liberation.
Was there any therapeutic assistance? Nobody showed up. You've been harmed, and that requires more than medicine and talk therapy. That requires justice. Healing cannot happen without justice. You know, Malcolm X said, if you stick a knife 9 inches into my back and you pull it out 3, that's not progress. Even if you pull the knife all the way out, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound, and America hasn't pulled out the knife.
But one big thing when I was writing the lyrics for this record was every song needs to be about something. The songs can't just be about like a vibe or an imagery or an atmosphere. They have to have a meaning. Yeah. And even if somebody doesn't pick up on it, that's fine. But like, they have to have a concrete meaning. I'm writing about something. And I would say generally, a lot of our stuff in a vague way is political or philosophical. That's really important for me to differentiate us from the bands that we come in the tradition of.
Both Frederick Douglass's narrative and Nuclear Tune's Terror Labyrinthian gives voice to the human condition, the only difference being the medium used and the passage of time. We all have experienced the pains of trauma, the joys of empowerment, and everything in between. Both will persist for as long as humanity exists.